Well, hello everyone. It is Monday. We are on the Monday Mindset live stream, and I'm noticing for some reason, Kevin, we're having some technical difficulties on the Giant platform. So if you are joining us on the Giant platform this morning, something is going on. So come on over to either LinkedIn or Facebook. It is live right there. So I will try in the middle during the interview today to see if I can't get it working, but something's going on. So sorry about that, folks. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm lovely. I'm warm for now in this chilly Oklahoma City weather. Again, apologies for the technology issues, friends. It happens every now and then. Maybe the internet's frozen, right? The rest of the country is frozen, so maybe our platform is as well. How are you? How are you doing this Monday morning?
I'm good. I'm warm in my home, and I'm very thankful. But wow, Kevin and I are both in Oklahoma, and it is crazy. Which I know a lot of the United States is experiencing what we are, but we just don't see two-degree weather here normally. So, but I was on a call with some folks from the UK yesterday, and they were experiencing the same thing. So I'm not going to complain, not going to whine, but it's just different, right?
Yeah, it's different, and it's just cold. I mean, we had basketball games for our boys on Saturday, and thankfully we were able to get out because they didn't have school all last week because it was canceled with weather and cold and all sorts of stuff. So thankfully we were able to get out Saturday and then get back in Saturday evening before everything fell apart yesterday with the snow and the wind and the cold. And yeah, it's just not. This isn't cold is one thing. When the wind chill is minus 33. That's more than cold. Like, I don't think it's legal, actually. I put in a complaint with the manager. I'm waiting to hear back to see how we can fix this.
Yeah, everyone from like Minnesota and I'm way up there in Wisconsin, they're all laughing at us going, get over it, people.
Right. Like, this is just Tuesday.
Well, and I know you have kiddos, and it's one thing when there's a snow day with kids where you can go out and play, but this is not that kind of weather. So yeah. We've also got Susie Lance here this morning. She's saying, hey there, it's chilly in Ohio too. Yes, I'm ready for winter.
Amen. So, amen.
And then we also have Joe joining us on Facebook. He's saying he's excited to hear the wisdom from his friend Jeffrey Broadnax. So I'm going to not spend any more time out of this 30 minutes away from Jeff because we have a great interview today. And so I'm going to come off, and Kevin, you introduce our guest, and then I'm going to be just kind of seeing questions. If you're out there on LinkedIn or Facebook, if you have questions for our guest or a comment, please let us know, and we'll get to those toward the end. So go for it.
Awesome. Sounds great, guys. I'm thrilled this week. I know I say that every week, but that's because we just have really fun people, really interesting people on the Monday Mindset. And so today we've got my friend Jeff Broadnax. Jeff, I met him in the midst of COVID. He made a trip down to Oklahoma City, stopped by the office. We got to hang out for a bit. Just blown away by Jeff, by his story, by the work that he's doing, by the way that he just approaches life. And I think you guys are going to love him as well. Can't wait to learn from him as it relates to building an invincible mindset. So, Jeff Broadnax, welcome, my friend. How are we doing?
Hey, man, I'm blessed. I can't be anything else. It's the only thing you're ever going to hear from me.
Amen to that.
Good. It's cold here, though. So, but it's winter, so it's supposed to be cold.
Yeah. And I'm one of those, I'm okay when it's cold if it snows, right? Then there's a reason for the cold. But like Tracy said, we got snow, but if it feels like minus 33, you can't really go out and enjoy it. Although I did go for a couple runs this weekend to see what that felt like. I don't know that I recommend that.
Yeah, no. See, that's what gyms are for. That's what treadmills are for, my friend.
That's right. I love it. All right, Jeff, let's get rolling. Like, give us 1 to 2 minutes or however long you want to go. Who is Jeff Broadnax? Like, what are you doing right now? How'd you get to this place in life? What's your story?
Well, I've been a pastor for 33 years. I work for my denomination's Grace Community International, but right now I'm serving as a worship director. So I work with pastors. So my job is to equip and empower and be a blessing to pastors. But I spent about 33 years in pastoral ministry, but I also did things outside of that. I've spent 20 years doing our prison ministry as well, working in prisons. I was a counselor inside a jail system for when I lived in New York, and just been doing other things like that, just doing things in my community. I'm the husband of a beautiful woman named Karen. We've been married 34 years this coming May. We've got 3 kids. We've got Jasmine, who's 29. We've got Kyle, who's 22. And we've got Cassidy, who is our bonus at 12. So kind of doing that thing. She's keeping me young, keeping us young. I A few years ago, to just tell you how I came into the giant world, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was out with our president. I was out at his home in California at the time, and I saw a toolkit on his counter. I started looking at the toolkit. I thought, oh, this is speaking to me. It's speaking to me. And I wanted to learn more. And within about a year, Greg Williams had invited me to kind of go through a cohort of the core with Tom Nebel. And I got to tell you, hooked ever since. And what I found out about myself, what I found out about leadership, I wish I had this stuff 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but hey, timing is timing. So that just gives you a little background to me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, just so you know, we've gone global. I don't know if you saw some of the comments going. We've got people from Scotland, people from England, just a few places making up our. I believe the Monday Mindset audience is now up to 12.5 million people, kind of exploding all over the world. Tracy, don't check those numbers. I'm sure they're true. But I do love that, with the Giant Toolkit. And for those who if you're not on our platform, just go to giant.tv/free account. It's free. There's access to the toolkit on there, and it's one of those. It is the foundation of Giant, right? These tools that allow you to communicate better, to lead yourself better, to lead others better. And the phrase that maybe hear most often is one that you just said. I wish I'd found this earlier. Right. And again, not that life was bad, not that things went wrong. Like we all have imperfect lives, but man, some of the hardships could have been avoided if we had a better language internally and externally, if we had more self-awareness. So I love that. So let's talk about mindset a little bit. When did you first realize for you that mindset mattered? So we know that it matters, but I don't think most people think about the fact that it matters, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did a counseling master's degree back in the early 2000s. And back then I was, you're learning about mindset, you're learning about how things function, how people think. And then not long after that, I read Carol Dweck's mindset book. It was a shifter for me. It was actually that and some of the Malcolm Gladwell stuff. It became a game changer for me. And just kind of learning how do I think? How do I operate? How do I face each day? How do I start each day? And how do I go through it? Am I a person with a growth mindset? And I really do believe that I have one of those mindset that is always looking to grow, that's always looking to expand. I try not to be static. That's probably one of my problems. I need to be more static, right? Because sometimes you don't give yourself a chance to internalize it all, right? And I've had mentors who were always stretching me. My mentor when I was in my 20s, John Hoffer told me, he said, Jeff, a lot of people, when you imagine yourself going into a room or going into a home, he said, most people go through the door. He said, every now and then, it's nice to come in the back door or even a window so you can see the same room from a different perspective. Yeah. And I try to live that way. So, it's just mindset. I try to face each day looking for the things that are real to me, the things that I can see slightly differently than I saw yesterday.
Yeah, no, I love that. We've talked before on Monday Mindset about just the value and the power in perspective, and that we get to choose our perspective. But I love what you said, and I've heard that before. But we usually come in the front door, but come in the back door or window. Basically, reframe your perspective because you just get so used to seeing things from a certain way, experiencing things from a certain way. I had a friend who he would drive a different way to work every day of the week. And because I just wanted to be, otherwise he just knew he was kind of asleep, right? He's just going through the motions, and he goes, I leave the house and suddenly I'm like, well, I'm at work. Don't remember how I got here. Just kind of going through the motions. Like, but if I go a different way, I've got to be alert. I've got to be engaged. And I'm seeing new things, seeing the city in new ways. And I think that's true for our mindset as well. So how do you, are there things that you do either daily or weekly, some kind of rhythm when it comes to trying to get to the right mindset? One of the things we talk about a lot is that you're not going to have an invincible, a positive, a healthy mindset on accident, right? It's a muscle, and I'm not going to have strong muscles on accident. Same thing with our mindset. So are the things that you do have a rhythm or some consistently that you do to get a healthy mindset?
The biggest thing I do is I pay attention to how I'm experiencing things. And I think this kind of goes back to when I was like 20 or 21. I went to college in Pasadena, California, and I remember we had an incredibly beautiful campus. And I was a junior. I know I was a junior, so I was probably 21. And I realized that one day I was walking back up to my dorm, and we had to go up these stairs, and there was a stream there. It was beautiful. But I was looking at the ground. I was looking at my steps all the time. And I realized that I did that a lot. I happened to look up and I started to see the beauty of this stream, all the plants and things that were there. And I realized how much of my life, how much of my world I'd spent looking down. I didn't know why I was doing it, why I did it that way, but I spent so much of my time looking down as opposed to looking up. So part of what I really try to do now is I try to reframe my thinking every day. Because I know when I feel like I'm kind of going inside, I'm kind of internalizing way too much, or stuff starts to bother me way too much, it's time for me to look up. It's time to kind of take a different perspective. My rhythm is kind of as I experience it. And as a connector creative, that's kind of how I live my life. Live my life absorbing things all the time. And I have to kind of come to grips with, sometimes I get so bogged down with my head down that I need to take a look, these things up.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Just the power of perspective and the power of being present, right? Because we just have this tendency, I think, we just go through life, and it doesn't mean we're angry. It doesn't mean we're bitter. It's just we're just not awake, right? Like we're kind of sleepwalking, going through the motions with our head down, just doing the work. And every day looks the same as the day before, and then we wonder why we're frustrated. We wonder why things aren't working out. It's like, well, you've just had your head down, and I just love that phrase. Like, it's time to look up. Right? Look up, get a fresher perspective.
And COVID's kind of made that harder for me, because being somebody who I need people, I need those circumstances, I need that kind of engagement. Mm-hmm. I'll go a couple of days where I'll be sitting in here, I'll just be in my home. And that's when I realize, you know what, I'm starting to become real insular. I'm starting to become, and it really means it's something that challenges me to reframe and kind of step into something fresh for myself. I feel like that's what God wants me to do. I need to be stepping into something fresh, in things. And as a pastor, right? I was spending time. I would be. You're looking at messages. You're giving messages out of the Bible or the things like that. And you have to be able to see it fresh. Otherwise, you do things right. When I get into that place in my world where I'm rehearsing things, it's a wake up call.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that perspective. So let's talk about COVID for a bit. And I know it's an annoying topic of conversation. We're all ready to be past it, but I do think it matters for mindset, because you said, and it's really important that this past year it was hard to do that with COVID, hard to find some of those rhythms, and I think it exposed a lot of people. And again, if we said this before, if you feel that as judgment or shame, it's not judgment or shame. No, it just exposed who we are and where we find our identity, and it exposed our mindset in some good ways and some unhealthy ways. So don't judge yourself on that. Just feel that truth and maybe the conviction of that truth, and then figure out how you're going to get better. But I saw someone recently post that, and I've had this mindset unfairly of people like, look, we're 11 months in. You should have figured out some habits. You should have settled in, whatever it may be. Yeah. And I saw someone say that, that people have settled in to rhythms and habits, but very unhealthy ones. Yeah. And so they found a rhythm and a routine and a quote unquote new normal, but it's not healthy, and it's not healthy for their mindset, which means it's not healthy for anything. And so how have you tried to be intentional in the midst of COVID, in the midst of lockdowns, in the midst of not being able to be with people, to still maintain a healthy perspective, a healthy mindset?
I think a lot of it comes from when I am with people, or when I'm engaging with people, talking to them, right? Talking to them and just kind of seeing what other people are going through, and really being in this space. I mean, Johnny talks about it all the time, this space of liberation, always looking to find something to free me or to free somebody else. Because I got to tell you, it is it's hard for me sometimes once I get stuck to get unstuck. But as long as I can stay in that space where I'm trying to find something that liberates. You were talking a little while ago about your pipe possibly freezing up. You got to get that water running through. I really try to keep something flowing. So I'm always trying to read something. I'm always trying to watch things or to kind of keep feeding myself. I kind of operate with a mindset around soil and seeds, right? I try to keep my mind as good soil. I try to keep myself as good soil, because I know that, and I try to make sure I'm planting good seeds for real all the time. Because we all need those three types of people that we have in our lives: the people to pour into us, the people to motivate us, and the people to pour into. And so for me, I try to keep myself as good soil so somebody can always speak into me and keep motivating me. But I also believe that my life is wrapped around planting good seed, right? I had a man in my early 20s who told me, said, Jeff, you got to be willing to plant seeds of trees you may never sit under. I step into every week, I step in every day with that mindset that my life is to have seeds planted into me and for me to plant seeds in other people. And in COVID, when you're kind of trapped inside, keeping that mindset, trying to keep that kind of mindset makes, for me, all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Well, it's again, it goes back to intentionality. It goes back to controlling what you can control. You can control the soil of your mind, right? You can't control what happens to the tree. Right. You can't control whether you sit under its shade or not. You get to, it's the obedience, right? To be good soil. And I think that's really critical. And it also goes back to what you consume, you become. And so if you're consuming negative news, if you're consuming things that stir up fear and anxiety and depression and bitterness and disconnect, well, then that's what's going to come out of you. But if you're consuming, whether that's reading or watching or listening, things that stir up peace, things that stir up joy, things that stir up purpose, then that's what's going to come out of you. And it's the soil thing. I think that's really good. We had a great question come in because talking about how you refresh your perspective, right? The value of, hey, it's time to look up, but multiplying that to your team. Right. So it's one thing for you to say, oh man, my head's been down. I need to look up and get perspective. Is there something that you can do with a team or that you've done with a team or have helped teams do to get everyone kind of looking up?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, and I have to speak to this as a pastor, because that's primarily who I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with pastors. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So one of the things that I ask at the beginning of every one of my meetings, I don't care what kind of Zoom call I'm on, what kind of meeting I'm on, I ask the same question. I ask, what have you seen God doing around you, for you, or with you? Because we all have stuff. I mean, I told you that I feel like I'm blessed. Sometimes I'm blessed with issues, right? And sometimes that the real reality is I've got to be able to see something that is outside of me, see something that is bigger than me. Social media kind of keeps us all trapped in this vortex of either negativity or positivity. So sometimes people need to just got to get away. And it's always that inspirational story. And maybe that's the thing they saw. Maybe they watched God encourage somebody, or maybe they were able to encourage somebody. But I start every meeting with that question. Help me see something. Somebody help me see something that you've seen either God doing or doing for you or with you in the life of somebody else. And I tell you what, it's hard. It's hard for people to get there. It's kind of like asking people to tell you 10 things that they can do well. Mm-hmm. They can tell you 10 things they don't do well. How many people can tell you 10 things that they do well, can write it down? They get like the 4 or 5 or 6, and then they start struggling. But they can come up with 10 to 15 things they don't do well.
Absolutely.
Kind of getting people to just asking that question. I think it's a game changer. And I've been doing some coaching, have a coach who asks me great questions all the time. Yeah. And so I'm trying to learn how to ask better questions. Yeah. That open-ended, that lets people kind of speak into it.
Well, because our lens is shaped by those questions, right? The things that we're looking for, and you get what you look for.
Yep.
So if you're looking for more work to do, if you're looking for the negatives, and I think especially in this season, people's heads have just been down. They're just trying to just put their head down, do the work, just get through this season, and to be able to look up and even just say, guys, like to bring those things to light, because what typically happens when your head goes down is you don't have conversation. And a lot of these frustrations that you have, whether it's around work, with people, with whatever, they just they eat at you. And so to even sit around with your team, could be physically in a room or just a Zoom call, and say, hey, what's your biggest struggle right now? And then allow everyone else to speak into that, because they're going to see things differently than you do, because they're not you, they're not in that situation. So then you get 10 new perspectives, but then do that for somebody else on the team, which forces you to get out of your kind of rut and see somebody else's issue. And it just practical ways to get out of the rut, right? Because we all have a tendency to get in those ruts.
Yeah, and that's what you just described there is really powerful, because sometimes we all want to help people, and sometimes your ability to speak into somebody else allows you to see that, you know what, I need somebody to speak into me, right? Yeah. Then now that gives somebody the courage to kind of share maybe that thing that they were bothered by, or that thing that's kind of gnawing at them. we all need that. We all, and those are the kind of things that I think help open the door. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Got another great question from Laura. She's got a couple people that she works with who are creative connectors. So if you don't know the giant language, creative connectors are introverts. They're naturally introverts. They're futurists. They've got these big picture ideas. They're very deep relationalists. They love people, but their thoughts don't tend to be very organized. They value integrity. They want to do things better. They're perfectionists, but it's all up in their head, and it tends to not come out very clearly. So when they share ideas, a lot of times, creatives, someone will look at them like, you just get blank stares. And so then the creative gets frustrated and they never share anything else. And someone else is going to have that same idea or that same solution. They're just going to communicate it in a clear way. And everyone's like, that's brilliant. And the connector or the creative is like, but I just said that. Like, I don't know what you said, but it wasn't that. So they just get really frustrated. So any tips on those people who generally find it hard to communicate maybe on the spot to get some of that gold out of their mind?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned over time, and I learned through the giant process, is sometimes the questions you ask a pioneer have to be different than the question that you ask a guardian or a creative or a connector. So sometimes what I ask when I'm dealing with a creative or a connector, I ask the question, help me see what you see. Paint me a picture. Tell me a story. Or help me, is there a story that can help me get what you're saying? Because I'll tell you what, they have the story. It's there. The picture's there. The image is there. They just don't know that people will get it. So it's not going to be a linear thing. You know, I kind of see creatives kind of drones. They kind of they see life from a drone perspective. So they see the stuff that's ahead. They see the stuff that's good. They see the pitfalls. But you don't know what part of it you're looking at because you're down on the ground. And part of this challenge is getting them to take you up to 10,000 feet and show it to you. So sometimes it's not in what you're asking them, it's how you're asking them. In my view, it would be help me see what you see, or just paint me a picture.
I love that phrase, paint me a picture. And that drone example is really good because they see things that we don't see, which is part of their superpower, right? They have so much value to give. And part of that too is on the person on the other side of them being willing to sit and listen. Right, give them a chance to get it all out, and don't interject, don't interrupt, don't cut them off, don't judge, because they'll get it, right. And like I said, it's not going to be this straight path. Like it may take a few twists and turns, but giving them space to speak and to paint that picture will allow them to get the gold out. That's really good. All right, another question, just for me and Tracy. We can bring in some more questions as they come along. Where have you had a time in your life where you realized you didn't have the mindset that you needed, where your mindset was actually working against you rather than working for you?
Yeah, I would tell you that's one of the things that I learned through the giant process. And anybody who steps into the giant process, who steps into even like the 5 voices, I'll use the 5 voices as an example. You're going to find that it may take you a while to get to your true foundational voices, to get to how truly you're wired. I started doing it in like year 30 of ministry, which is why I say I wish I had learned it earlier. Mm-hmm. The first 2 times I took the 5 voices assessment, I came out as a connector, nurturer, guardian. But it made perfect sense for my journey, for my story, for where I worked, for what the church environment was. Then I became a connector, creator, nurturer. And I thought, okay, that's weird. And the more I took it, the more I kind of understood it, the more I got deeper and closer to who I naturally am. I realized that because of some people that I worked for when I was very young, the creative and the pioneering voices, or the ability, the things that those voices are champions of, were squelched. I worked for some pretty people early on, and it squelched in my early 20s my ability to dream, my ability to make firm decisions. So I made a lot of choices, right? Now, to me, there's a difference between a decision and a choice.
Yeah,
it means you cut away from other possibilities, whereas a choice is something you've got options. And so I had to learn. I didn't start learning to dream again until I was in my 40s. I didn't start operating in my pioneer voice, particularly in the church setting, until I was in my 40s. Or if I was in outside settings. When I was working in the jail system, absolutely. When I was working with young people or coaching them, absolutely. When I was teaching, absolutely. But when I was in my church environment, the place where I spent most of my time, I defaulted to a mindset that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And I've come to grips with believing that I belong in the room, which is kind of the one, Tom Nebel, who walked us through it. He was going through it with us. And that was one thing he said to me. He said, Jeff, you got to believe you belong in the room. And that's real. But I'm 50, right? Reminding me that I'm not a boy in a man's world.
Yeah.
Right? That I've got something to offer. So that's I can say that shaped a lot of my middle years in pastoring. You wouldn't say that it was bad, but I settled in that high support, low challenge quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
I became a protector of people.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got to that space where I was really able to liberate myself.
Yep.
And realize that I need to liberate other people. So one of the tools that really affected me the most was the inhibition prohibition, the question of who says you can't. And what's interesting is I spent a lot of time working with people who were prohibited or who were inhibited. Yeah. In the jail system I do a whole message with handcuffs on, with the key in my hand, because that's kind of how I realized I handcuffed myself.
Yeah.
Never applied to me. It could always apply to other people, but I struggled to make it apply to me. And that was one of the most powerful epiphanies I had, that I was operating in an inhibition rather than a prohibition.
Yeah.
Kind of being liberated from stuff like that. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. That's huge
for me.
Yeah.
Being into who I naturally am.
That's right. And Rachel's got a great point. It's funny how it takes us time to get to who we really are. She said she always connected with her second voice, but in a church setting, it's pioneer. Well, she's a guardian connector. And Steve Cochran talks about this a lot. Steve, one of the co-founders of Giant, helped create the five voices, the brilliance of the five voices. I heard him say one time that most people are living out of there's nature, nurture, and choice. Mm-hmm. Right? Nature is who you're hardwired to be, like who you actually are. Nurture is your environment, which could be your parents, the school you went to, faith background, small town, big city, America, England, North, South, all these things. And then the choices that you made. And he said, I would argue most people, when it comes to their voices and how they're living, it's actually they're living out of their nurture, not their nurture or voice, right, but they're living as a result of their environment, which is why so many of us feel a little bit off and a little bit and more exhausted than we should be. I think I'm okay with life being exhausting if I'm running on purpose, right? Like if I'm putting my head down at night exhausted, like, man, I was who I needed to be today. Mm-hmm. I brought my best today. But if I'm laying my head on the pillow at night exhausted, like, who am I? Why did I try to please that person? So, man, this didn't feel, and that's how most people are. And so that's a really critical point to where, your mindset, it's not that you had a toxic mindset. You just weren't who you were created to be. You weren't you at your best, which meant you were holding yourself back, which in turn holds others back. This whole time you're trying to serve people, but if you're not serving yourself first, and you guys hear this, that's not selfish. Self-care isn't selfish. It's the best way for you to serve other people is to make sure that you are healthy first.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I found. I found that I was living out of an unhealthy, a truly unhealthy space, just for me, because you don't realize what it's like to be on the other side of that, right? Giant talks about that a lot. What's it like to be on the other side of you? And when I started seeing it in my family, when I started seeing it in because I turn into myself very often, right? You have that place where you want so much because I'm seeing different things. I'm seeing things differently, but I'm not living them out that way. I'm not bringing enough challenge to my own world that it allows me to be free myself. But again, I can do it for other people. I can help other people see it. That's where the know yourself, yourself, huge. Right? You can't really lead your team if you don't know your team. You can't lead yourself. You don't really know your own patterns, right? And the life that you have. So yeah, it's been a great journey because I keep learning more and more about getting into who I'm wired to be, who God's made me to be, for real. And if I can live into that, I'm good. I just believe God sets up divine appointments for me every day. And I live my life looking for them. I live my life looking for those things that it may be a passing comment. I mean, the day that I came over there to the office, to me, that was a divine appointment. You happened to be there, and I learned about chopping wood. And I've been able to teach other people about chopping wood. Meeting up with Tracy and meeting up with Jeremy and some of the others, right? It's and Johnson. I take those moments and I hold on to them and I use them. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's how I live my life each day.
I love it. Hey, Tracy, will you bring in that inhibition prohibition tool? Do you have that handy?
Oh, yes, I will. It might take me a minute. So yeah, go ahead.
So Mike, I'll start explaining it as Tracy pulls it up. We got a question. Explain inhibition prohibition to someone who hasn't studied it. Actually, had a few people comment like, "Oh, I haven't seen this tool before." It's actually one of my favorite tools. Was teaching this to some student athletes just last week around this idea of mindset. So there's prohibition and inhibition, right? Prohibition is, we tend to go through life saying, well, they said I can't, and they're not going to let me. And they said, but he said, and I would, but they, and we put our lack of action on somebody else. And more often than not, the they that we are talking about is us, right? Nobody's actually stopped you from doing anything. It's your own mindset. Prohibition is someone actually preventing you from taking an action, from making a decision, from doing certain work. Inhibition is you stopping yourself. So I'll give you an example. My 12-year-old, his basketball team practiced a couple weeks ago. The coach said, all right, you and you guys have permission to shoot 3-pointers. The rest of you don't. If you shoot it, you're going to come out of the game. He said, I love you guys, but I trust these 3 to shoot it. For the rest of you, it's a bad shot. And we want to be about taking good shots. And so a couple times down the court in practice, one of the guys who he said can't shoot a 3 is about 7 to 8 feet from the goal, wide open, and didn't take the shot. He passed it or did something, and the coach stopped and said, hey, why didn't you take that shot? He said, well, you said I can't shoot. He said, no, I didn't say that. I said you can't shoot 3s. I didn't say you can't shoot. This is a great shot. You're going to make this shot 7 out of 10 times. This is the exact shot you should be taking. Well, what he was prohibiting him from taking 3s, but the young man was inhibiting himself from taking good shots. And so it's to get really clear on the things that you need to do to get better, actions that you need to take in your life that you haven't been taking, and getting clear on why. Is someone actually preventing you, or is it your own thoughts? Is it your own mindset? Are you handcuffing yourself with inhibition?
Yeah, sorry. It's I've got terrible internet today because of the weather, so it's just being very, very slow.
All good. Any other questions that we got, Tracy, coming in?
No other questions that have come in, but I would say that I have a personal question, Jeff, because I always like to bring in, and here we finally got the tool. If you can see it, are you able to see it?
Yeah. So that's the tool. And again, it's where are you being held back by your own limiting belief, right? Your own unhealthy mindset, your own insecurity, your own fear, or is someone actually enforcing that on you? And to be really clear about that. Because again, most of the time it's not prohibition. Oh, my boss isn't gonna let me. You know, let you what? Get better? Like right. maybe they prohibited you from going to a conference, but they're not prohibiting you from watching a YouTube video on better communication. Right. And so I just getting clear on what are you actually being prohibited by or to do, and where is it your own inhibition?
So you can see why, as I told you, I used to do presentations where I would do handcuffs. I carry around handcuffs for this reason. Why seeing that tool would speak to me.
Yeah.
And just make me go, yeah, that's what I was trying. That's what I was able to share with somebody else. But then I started seeing all the question marks in my head. And the real question was for me, what are my own limiting beliefs?
That's right.
So yeah, it's powerful stuff.
And when it comes to your, go ahead, Tracy.
No, go ahead.
I was saying when it comes to your mindset, you are inhibiting you. Nobody's preventing you from having a better mindset. Like it's just
exactly right.
It's an absolute lie. Nobody is preventing it. You have the opportunity. You have the choice. You have the ability to have a better mindset. And not to put in a word for our sponsor, but giant.tv/free account. It's free. Right. And I mean, we have content on we've Tracy has recorded every one of these Monday mindsets, put them into a series. We have another series on building a healthy mindset that's just really, really powerful. I mean, the resources are there for you to have a better mindset. So that is an inhibition, not a prohibition. Tracy, what was your question?
Well, first of all, I was going to say, Jeff, what's your affiliate code? /Jeff
Broadnax.
Just Broadnax. Okay.
Just Broadnax.
Yeah. So Kevin mentioned if you want a free account, go to giant.tv/free account. Even better, if you really have connected here with Jeff and you think, gosh, I'd really love to work with him or learn from him or Kevin, either way, you can always do giant.tv/Broadnax if you want to connect with Jeff. You want to connect with Kevin /
Culture Wins.
culture wins. You'd think at this point I'd know that. I have to ask you every week. But anyway, that connects you to a expert here at Giant, to where they can reach out to you. You can reach out to them and things like that. So, but my question for you, my personal question, because we don't have any more coming through that I see, is I always love to bring this back to family, because all of our Giant tools, they don't just work in the corporate setting. They don't just work in the ministry setting or the nonprofit setting. They work in every relationship of your life. And so, Jeff, I'd just be curious to know, I know I work with people sometimes that'll say, I have a great mindset. I wake up every morning, I'm rearing to go, that kind of thing. But my husband or my wife or my teenage son or daughter, they're downers. How do I help inspire them? So what would you say to that?
I can say this, just learning a little bit, just learning about the voices will be like a key to understanding something about why things are the way they are. My wife and I, when I went through this, the 5 voices, and I realized I was a creative, my wife is a guardian, right? So call it nemesis voices, but it's the opposite voice. It's the hardest voice for me to access. And just like the connector, it's the hardest voice for her to access. And so just something so simple as learning how we communicate. I'm always telling the story. I've always got these big ideas, and she hears the things that I say just as if they were, I'm speaking out loud. She hears them as fact, as not just fact, but as committed fact.
Yes.
And just learning to use provision, plan, promise, just learning to be able to speak to her differently in a way that says, honey, I'm provisionally saying this. I'm not saying that I'm going to do this for sure, but I say things so confidently, so boldly. She hears them boldly. And I'm going to tell you what, just that one thing in my marriage has reshaped how we communicate over the last 4 or 5 years. Same thing with my kids, just understanding how I speak to my kids and how I'm hearing my kids. It's such a big difference. Just in understanding. So yeah, it helps in families. The Giant tools is learning kind of how to call up instead of call out. If I can tell this quick story, we always have a story. One of my daughters, my youngest one, was having trouble getting ready for school, getting up for school in this COVID time. And so one day I was away and she missed the bus. And I thought, okay, man, I can do one or two things. I can come back and I can yell, I can make this thing where I can chastise her, call her out. I said, you know what? No, call it up. So we did a field trip, the two of us. I drove over to her school and we walked the 3 miles home together.
Oh.
Right?
Awesome.
Because this way I wanted to realize, look, this is what happens when we don't come through. I'm not gonna always be here, but you're gonna have to get to school one way or another. So we can do this a couple different ways. To me, what that did was it built a relationship and communication rather than alignment and execution. Making her focus on getting up and getting out to school. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff made much more sense after going through Giant, how to apply that kind of stuff. So anyway, to me, it works. It works, and it has transformed my leadership in my home, as well as with my consulting or with my church or with other places where I serve.
Absolutely. That's a great example. Your daughter will never forget that 3 miles, and right. She's telling her kids, and then she will model that with her own children someday. So that's great. Well, I can tell you this, Jeff, we do a lot of live streams at Giant. We've had a lot of interviews, and I've never seen such interaction and engagement from people who are watching. Comments, you'll have to go back in and watch all the comments. People are very much fans of you, but I know that is because of the way that you live your life and the influence you have, the impact you have around you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Amen.
It is my pleasure. My pleasure.
And truthfully, guys, I know Tracy mentioned this, but to connect with Jeff, he can do a 5 voices session for your team, do a boot camp for you, all sorts of stuff. Use that code giant.tv/Broadnax. And when you do, you are connected to him. There's a button. You'll send an email. It will go to Jeff. So if you want to hang out with him, have him spend some time with you or your team, make sure you use that code.
That's right. Well, thanks everyone. We are actually over time. We could have spent probably a couple hours with Jeff today. So Jeff, we appreciate you investing time with us today. Thanks everybody for tuning
My pleasure.
in. And we will see you next time, next Monday, same time, same place. Bye-bye, everyone.